Take the national anthem. Please be seated. Good afternoon and welcome everyone to this very special event sponsored by the Legacy of Honor program. Details pertaining to this outstanding not-for-profit organization are scripted into your program, and I strongly encourage all of you, all of us, to support this great cause in any way that we can. Probably not unlike many of you, I find myself frequently taking my personal freedoms and our collective civil liberties for granted. Consider the following. By a show of hands, students, speaking to you as well, how many of us value our rights, be it symbolic or stated, supportive or contrarian, to freely and publicly express our opinions without fear of governmental retribution or retaliation? The First Amendment protects that right. Or sportsmen among us, do we not live for the thrill and challenge of chasing the trophy buck, or spending a lazy afternoon at the range, discharging our preferred weapon of choice? The Second Amendment protects that right. Finally, students, the due process protections written into our district code of conduct are guaranteed and protected by the Fifth Amendment. The list is endless. Our freedoms safe, our liberties secure. My friends, I firmly and unequivocally believe that we live in the greatest nation that history and humanity have ever known. To me, citizenship in the United States of America represents a ticket for first-class passage to the pursuit of a life filled with limitless opportunities and endless possibilities, purchased through the toil, sweat, and blood shed by our friends, our neighbors, and our loved ones. Indeed, to quote a classic line, freedom is not free. In closing, today we assemble to rightfully recognize the virtue and valor of service to one's country. Most important, we are here to celebrate the life and legacy of a local legend a true American hero, a man who made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of your freedom and of mine, Justin Ryan Whiting. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for your attention. As we proceed with the program, I would like to remind our students that at the conclusion of the program, just following God Bless America, the playing of God Bless America, you will be asked to remain at your seats to be directed to your next class. At this time, I would like to introduce Mr. Todd Jacobs, Hancock Central School District graduate, board member, and United States Marine. Thank you.
Hello. Good afternoon. The title of today's assembly is The Values of a Soldier. In a few short minutes, we will have an honored guest speaking about those values. But before we do, I would like to talk about another soldier, in particular, Justin Whiting. Let me ask you, I know we're here in the dead of winter here in Hancock, and there isn't a whole lot to do, but how many of you will be going to the movies tomorrow, or Saturday night? Do you know what's playing? 12 Strong. It's about the horse soldiers. The horse soldiers is about a team of special forces who went to Afghanistan immediately after the attacks on September 11, 2001 to fight the Taliban. The only way into battle was on horseback. One of those horse soldiers isn't here yet, but will be here with us this afternoon. And he was Justin's team sergeant when he went to Fort Bragg, joined the 5th Group. Justin was born September 24th, 1980. He was raised on a farm out in French Woods here in Hancock. He was a 1999 graduate of HES. He joined the Army after graduation and was first enlisted as a mechanic and was stationed at Fort Hood in Texas. But Justin felt a desire to do more. He pursued and later became a Green Beret. Not just a Green Beret, but a medic at that. 10 years ago tomorrow, Justin gave his life while serving his country in Mosul, Iraq. When Randy first asked me if I would be willing to speak today, my first thought was, of course, I would be honored. Who wouldn't be? But in the passing days, I became a little hesitant. You see, I didn't really know Justin all that well. He was 10 years younger than I am. We had met, and I may have said hello in passing, but I didn't really know him. And in speaking about Justin, I certainly didn't want to do him a disservice for all that he had done for us. But here's what I do know. Justin was born and raised in Hancock and graduated from HCS, and that really means something. I wanted to try to do Justin honor by putting into words the kind of person he was. When I was reading one of the letters his teammates, after passing, had wrote, and I thought it would be best to just read the letter. It's called In Memory of Justin Whiting. Staff Sergeant Justin Whiting re-entered the Army in May of 2007 to rejoin then ODA 582. The detachment he had already served on for 2 combat tours in Iraq. Another member of our ODA had remarked to me that Justin would add a bit of levity to the team, and that was certainly an understatement at best. The anticipation of Justin's return to the unit wasn't marked with the usual skepticism or uncertainty that one would expect, but rather with the confidence and trust that one of our best was coming back to us. I think that alone shows what the kind of person he was. It was his reputation and his abilities that motivated leaders at all levels of command to work to bring Justin right back to where he asked to be on this detachment. Justin came back to the Army, into the Army, back to 5th Group, because he was a true patriot and a warrior, and most of all, he was a Green Beret. one who could not live outside of the company of his friends, nor could he let them go back into the fight without him. With his tremendous personality and charisma, Justin could have succeeded at anything in the world, yet he chose to be a soldier, to serve America with dignity and pride, and to apply the simple values of hard work, dedication, and patriotism, earning the respect and admiration of everyone who knew him. He was tough, driven, remarkably intelligent, with an enormous capacity for the kindness that made him loved by everyone around him. He made house calls to sick wives on the team and spent team parties entertaining the children as a human jungle gym. He was a physical specimen, easily the most fit member of a well-conditioned team. Justin was funny, witty, and wildly sarcastic, and could make anyone laugh no matter the situation. Every time we conducted our pre-mission checks, Justin's favorite thing was to post in front of the Humvee and proudly declare, "Sir, your chariot awaits." Whether on a combat mission or at the range, at work, play, or at rest, with Justin you were always in good company. He was an excellent soldier, a medic, and a friend. Justin Whiting was everything that was great about Special Forces. He was a young man that I would fully trust to lead a platoon of Iraqi soldiers into a gunfight, to treat any combat casualty, or to make thoughtful, intelligent decisions in the toughest of circumstances. Justin served his detachment in every way he knew how. He was a medic, an assault leader on objectives, a CQC trainer for the FID team, and his self-proclaimed finest hour, a helicopter-born combat sniper. He was also a team motor sergeant, personnel NCO, much to his amusement, our mail handler. Justin possessed an unwavering dedication that he applied to any task he was given. His prowess as a medic was unmatched, and no matter what injury or illness you had, Justin had a way of putting you at ease when you saw the commitment in his eyes, and you knew that he'd give you nothing less than his best care. As much as I try, I don't think I can put into words how tremendously proud I was to be associated with such a great individual. He embodied all the values that his country founded on: duty, loyalty, honor. He was all-American in every way. Yet still, with all of his talents, he stayed a true quiet professional. Justin had no reward or praise for anything he did, or he asked for no reward or praise for anything he did. Only the trust and friendship of those he cared about. One moment spent with Justin, and he knew he deserved the best leadership in the world. And for those of us who made the choice to join this distinguished regiment, it quickly became clear that earning the Green Beret means earning the right to stand and fight beside men like Justin. Justin was killed instantly when his vehicle was hit by an IED, which wounded 2 other soldiers in his truck on a combat control mission outside of Mosul. He was killed serving a country that he loved, whose ideals and freedoms he held dear above all things. His final moments before the blast were spent in laughter and camaraderie, as so many moments with Justin were, and he died amongst his closest friends. The day prior to this incident, during a command patrol in the desert, Justin had saved the life of an Iraqi Special Operations Commando whose vehicle had overturned, pinning him and other Iraqi soldier underneath. Justin not only assisted in pulling the vehicle off the trapped soldiers, but his heroic actions and medical skill sustained the soldier long enough for a helicopter evacuation. Afterwards, while someone else might have sat back and reveled in the accomplishment of an extraordinary deed, Justin just shrugged it off. He had just He had just done what he was born to do: accomplish his mission and do anything he could to help others. Justin will be survived by his family and loved ones, but certainly not least of all by ODA 5322. His mourning brothers in arms, who must continue our mission with our dear friend, and his memorial will be dedicated by the efforts of those who must push on to ensure that his most noble sacrifice for our great nation has been in vain. And as we struggle to say goodbye, our thoughts and our memories bring us to one simple conclusion. The few of us can say by what rule heroes are measured for those of us who have served alongside Justin. We know that America has truly laid one of its finest sons and heroes to rest. Strength and honor, Justin. I would also like to add to that, I know he saved lives, but he also, I've been told, delivered three babies during his tour. As he was growing up here and attending HCS, Justin sat in those same chairs that you are sitting in now. He played sports. In fact, from one story I was told, he took great pride in the bell game. If I get the sequences wrong, please forgive me. But you'll get the gist. Justin's football team had beaten Deposit and won the bell game, so it was here in Hancock. Justin, well, as it used to be, the winner of the second game of the boys' basketball game would get to keep the bell. Justin didn't play on the basketball team, but at halftime of the second game, Hancock was losing, and Justin wasn't having any part of it. He went to the locker room and asked the coach if he could speak to the team all by himself. The coach allowed him to, and lo and behold, the team came out in the second half with a newfound energy and won the game. He was a great motivator. You see, I believe that the values of a soldier that our guests will be speaking about momentarily aren't just taught and are what soldiers live by in the Army. I also, I also believe that here in Hancock, here in our schools with our teachers, our administration, our coaches, they teach us these values as well. Back when I played, as well as Justin, for Coach Smith, we had a slogan on how to carry ourselves. It was called Pride and Poise. If I'm not mistaken, the football team is now using another one with t-shirts made up that say, "Don't embarrass the neighborhood." In other words, try to be a good person and remember who you represent. We are also taught these values through our blue-collar work ethic. Our local loggers, our bluestone quarrymen, our farmers, our nurses, and our accountants. I believe we are all cut from the same cloth. I graduated from Hancock, joined the Marine Corps, and got out and lived away for 17 years. But in 2006, we moved back home. We are often asked why we came back here by choice. It's simple. Hancock is a beautiful and great place to live. In reading the letters written and listening to stories about Justin from his teammates, friends, and family, I know that the Army and our country lost one of its best. But I also know that we, Hancock, gave the Army and our country one of our best. I'd like to now read a letter written recently by Justin's brother, Phil, that explains what Hancock meant to Justin. Justin took great pride in where he was from. In high school, I couldn't wait to move away from Hancock. I think it's normal for young people to dream of distant places outside of their hometowns. To think about the people they'll meet, the things they'll do once they have crossed over the threshold of youth into adulthood. Justin and his buddies, me included, would sit around and talk about all that we were going to do in life and where we would end up. Some guys wanted to move to California, some guys to Europe. Justin was no different in that he was looking forward to his military career and where it would take him. But where Justin was different from all of us was how he always talked about coming home after his travels were over. He wanted nothing more than to be running the family farm and eventually have a family to tend to as well. He was a real picketed fence and 2 kids in the front yard kind of guy. I think it is all the country music he listened to. No matter what the conversation would be about in the future, he would always mention that he had every intention of coming home. When pressed on his reasoning, he would always say 2 things. 1, it's expected of him. And 2, his father had come home from the service to run the family farm. And 2, this place was perfect. What more could someone want? Justin loved the people in Hancock and its place in the world. Hunting was a passion of his, and winter was thought of more as a challenge than a choice. Watching the hearse bring Justin over the hill on Main Street 10 years ago tomorrow is the most painful memory of my life. It was in that moment that his passing hit home for me, and for a few minutes I was paralyzed with grief. But as the days have turned to years, I have found something more poetic about that day. Justin loved this town, and on that day they loved him back. I don't know how many people were out there on the street to watch our local hero make his way home, but I bet if you asked folks around town, you find that more locals were there than weren't. And that's just another reason why Justin loved this place. I'm going to leave you with one quote that Phil had also found from Abraham Lincoln. I like to see a man proud of the place in which he lives. I like to see a man live so that his place will be proud of him. And now, we are honored to have a very distinguished soldier and leader with us here today. Colonel Andrew Hanson, the garrison commander at the United States Military Academy at West Point, New York. His distinguished 24-year career is outlined in your program. Colonel Hanson knew Justin and served with him in the 5th Special Forces Group. He's going to explain the 7 core values that the U.S. Army strives to install in all its soldiers and also discuss with us how Justin lived those values. Please join me in welcoming Colonel Hanson.
Well, thank you for those very kind remarks. I appreciate that very much. Superintendent Dougherty, Principal Asquith, President of the Board of Education, Mr. Witt, I believe is here today. A representative of the Board of Education, Mr. Jacobs, and the President of the Legacy of Honor, Colonel Retired Farrell, up here on the stage. Faculty, staff, guests, parents, students. I just want to say thank you for welcoming me to Hancock. And I appreciate being here. And I want to also say thank you to the veterans I see here in the audience today. I'd like to give them a round of applause also. It is quite the honor for me to be here for multiple reasons. I grew up in a small town in New York, much like Hancock, Wales Center, New York, with more cows than people. No, we didn't have a stop sign or a stoplight even on the main street. There was a volunteer fire department, a general store, and that was it. And we had a Marine that was killed in Grenada in 1983, I believe. And, you know, I just hearken back to that as potentially what happened here when Justin was killed 10 years ago tomorrow. So today, I do want to honor one of your alumni who gave a full measure in defense of his country. He was an amazing soldier. You heard about it. You heard about it from his teammates. You probably know about it. It's a small town. And I'm amazed at Hancock. It gave up one of its own to be a Green Beret, and really for 3 Green Berets to come out of Hancock is a tremendous feat to the quality of people that are here within the town. So I knew Justin, as you heard. I served with him, and I was his company commander when he was killed. So the 19th of January was a difficult day. And serving with him was tremendous, was wonderful. And I was responsible for him. I was responsible for putting him in that place in Iraq. And he did his job. He did his job along with 82 other Green Berets. So is Justin unique? No. No, he's not. He's not unique. He served with 81 other Green Berets that really have the same values, the same internal drive, the same sense of duty. But Justin is unique from that trip in that he didn't come home. Didn't come home alive. And actually, he wasn't that unique in that respect, sadly. For on 17 April, one of Justin's company mates, fellow Green Beret Jason Brown, was killed also. So it was a tough rotation. And I want to be here definitely to honor Justin. And I want to tell you, you heard about him. So I'm not here to really talk about Justin. And as I said, just talk about the values, the internal drive that Justin displayed. And talk about, really, to me, what being a Green Beret is, a man of honor, courage, sacrifice, and these attributes that he showed, and really the attributes that I find in most of our soldiers. And in the program that you have, if you have one, on the back page, it talks about the Army values. And it talks about the culture that we try to instill in the Army. But I haven't been, per se, in the regular Army for a long time. I transitioned to be a Special Forces officer in 1999. And I have been serving in that community almost continuously since. And I brought a couple artifacts, I guess, today that I thought you'd find interesting. This was the company guide on. I step away from the mic. I hope you can still hear me out there. Can you hear me in the back? So this is the company guide on that Justin served under. So Bravo Company, 3rd Battalion, 5th Special Forces Group, it's all faded. There's places here where you can see where it was held on to the wood shaft that it was displayed on. It has 6 months of time in Iraq under its belt, the same amount of time we had that rotation. It's all faded and tattered and worn, dirty. It's got Iraqi dust on it. I'll take a little off here for you. This is one of the reasons we fight. Not for the cloth, but for the people that it represents. And where do you find people that will do that and have the culture that we have? And it was mentioned many times. Justin was a Green Beret. And I've had people ask me, what does that mean, a Green Beret? It's literally a Green Beret. That's what it is. A symbol, hopefully, of excellence, symbol of pride, symbol of honor, of courage. A little homework assignment for you all is to Google Barry Sadler's Ballad of the Green Beret and listen to that tonight if you would for me. A #1 hit song in 1966. #1 hit song. Listen to it, please, and you'll be shocked how the culture of America has changed. That was, on Dick Clark's rockin' New Year's hit parade or whatever it was back then, right? And there's a coin in my pocket that I carry, and this is near and dear to my heart. U.S. Army Special Forces, the quiet professionals. And inscribed on it is, I serve for those on my left and right. And that's the culture that we have. And the culture that called Justin back into the Army after he had left. And I think you'll know, or you know the story. He said all he wanted to do was go hunting and fishing and come back here, and the Army was too political or something along these lines, and he'd had enough. And, I imagine for I don't know how old he was then, 24 or something, 27. 27-year-old, you kind of get fed up with things and you want to move around and this and that. And then the call came back for him to come serve again. Where do you get that culture? Well, that culture's all over the place. I gave him the drive to come back, culture to serve. He would not let his teammates down, come back into the ranks, come back into the Army. And the Army has these people that aspire to serve, that aspire to be all they can be. That was the Army's slogan in the 70s and 80s, right? Be all you can be. Well, I wish the Army would bring that back, actually. So we have great values, I think, in the Army. Loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, personal courage. You heard today, and you can probably extrapolate, things that Justin did that display almost all of those. And in the Army, we do hold those values dear. And the nice part about it is that when you walk in and you see a soldier, you see a fellow Green Beret, you expect them to hold those values. You expect that if we got into a gunfight, that the person on your left and right would take care of you. And you have that expectation that they have the same culture, the same values, the same internal drive that you have. And generally, I've found that to be true. So was Justin unique in that? No, he wasn't. Justin lived it. And a lot of other soldiers live it. 5,000 plus soldiers have been killed living up to that in the last conflict that we've had here. And there's thousands of men and women that serve today that uphold these values. And they serve really the greatest country in the world. And some of our other pieces and mottos that we have for the Green Berets is De oppresso liber. So if you have any Latin students in the audience, I don't know. But to free the oppressed. Why do we do it? Our goal is to free other people. And we may give our lives doing it. But when you come home and you look in the mirror, you say, well, it was worth it. So I don't want this to be a very somber talk, which it has been, so I'll try to liven it up a little bit now. And I will say that the Army has been a wonderful experience for me. And this is not a recruiting pitch for anybody, but you know, if you're looking to do something and you feel that you have these internal values, you want to have loyalty, you have a duty to serve, you want to respect people and other cultures, and you want to potentially help them when they're in danger, that you want to serve the nation, something bigger than yourself, that you want to live up to honor, have an honor code, that you believe in integrity, and you want to be with those people, the Army, or any service for that matter, but really the Army, is a good place to be in. And personal courage, that's tough. Personal courage. Getting up every day. You know, Justin didn't know he was going to die that day. I didn't know. Nobody knew. But he was going to travel on a road from point A to point B. And in Iraq, in that time, in 2008, the likelihood that we were going to get in contact and duke it out with the enemy was great. We expected it, I guess, but yet you didn't expect it. And it happened. And nobody can really say why. It just is. But do you have that personal courage to drive that road tomorrow? Do you have that courage to drive the road the day after that? Do you have the courage to jump out of an airplane 200 times? Do you have the courage to do this? Do you have the courage to do that? Do you guys have the courage to study when you need to study and not do something you shouldn't do? Do you have the courage to listen to your internal values? To listen to what your parents taught you? As long as it was good, I guess. To listen to what your teachers teach you. That's the question. And I will say that I believe that the Army is full of those people. So there is time for question and answers. I'd be happy to answer questions about the Army, about serving in special forces, about serving in special operations. Even the horse soldier movie that's coming out, I knew most of the soldiers that are depicted in that movie. Most of the exploits that occurred in that. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, I really didn't want this to be overly somber, hard not to be, commemorating the 19th of January. But it really is a celebration that we have soldiers, people like this. And I am really honored to be able to talk to you here today. And if you want to ask me about where I've been, where I've served, what I've done, I'm more than happy to answer. So I turn it over to the student body, our principal, see if anybody has any questions from the audience. Somebody's got something.
I'd like to ask a question. Please discuss with students the multiple pathways they can choose to pursue in serving their country upon graduation, be it the reserves, be it the National Guard, be it the Academy of West Point. Discuss briefly some of the possibilities that exist
Oh, sure.
for young people.
Sure, so you have plenty of opportunities to serve in the military upon graduation. First, graduate, right? Get that over with. We definitely want people with high school diplomas. We want So you have options to enlist in any of the services, to go to your recruiter and find a job or specialty that you're interested in. If you're interested in being a mechanic, Justin did that first as a mechanic. You can also go in and be special operations right off the bat now, as Greg has done. So there are opportunities to enlist. Then there's opportunities to be an officer, to go to a college and do the Reserve Officer Training Course, be part of the Reserve Officer Training Corps, ROTC, or if you have an application into West Point and become a cadet at West Point. There's an opportunity to become an officer in the Army, or if you go to the Naval Academy or the Air Force Academy or some other academy, you can do those things. Then if you don't want to be a full-time soldier, there's the National Guard, there's the reserves, so those opportunities exist also. There's great benefits to these, all have different variations for earning money for colleges, for learning a job skill, for learning leadership, for just getting to go have good, fun times. So all of these exist. If you are interested, especially I think at colleges and ROTC, I think your guidance counselors would be a great place to start. The recruiters, wherever there is one, probably in Binghamton's the closest recruiter, I assume. Or come visit West Point. We're only about an hour and 45 minutes away. So come see what we have to offer there. And the opportunities for men and women now are almost equal. And that wasn't the case, really, just until a few years ago. So for the women in the audience, if you have a desire to serve as an infantry officer, you can. If you have the desire to serve in a combat arms branch, you can. The barriers are no longer there. And women can serve in special forces if you desire to do that. So don't think that I'm talking only to the men in the audience. Those are some opportunities for you. Will you get to travel? Yep. Will you get to travel to really crappy places? Yep. So if you want to go to nice places, join the Navy. And if you want some really easy stuff, join the Air Force. And if you don't quite want to do the Department of Defense, then join the Coast Guard. They're under Department of Transportation. No, I'm sorry, Homeland Defense now. They used to be under Department of Transportation. So there's plenty of opportunities to serve the country. That is, I think, what the superintendent was getting at. If you feel a desire to serve, if you feel a desire to do something beyond yourself, if you desire to be with the people that I talked about, if you deserve, to serve with people like Justin Whiting, then please consider it. Again, I'm not up here to be a recruiter, but I will tell you, I like the culture that we have in the Army. And I have one of our relatively young soldiers is here today, and after this, if you want a chance to talk to him, he happens to be here, one of my military police that's on the base at West Point. Again, learn a trade, learn how to be a military police officer, and then potentially transition into a different law enforcement opportunity. I mean, there are many ways that the Army can provide you a good stepping stone. And I have valued it. Obviously, I've been in for 24 years, right? So, A, I'm either too chicken to get out, or B, I like it. Or maybe it's a combination of A and B. Maybe there's no good job opportunity for me on the outside. I can only break things and do so much damage, and there's really not really a good civilian job for me to do. But the reality is I really love it. And I love it because of the people. I love it because of the people on my left and right. All right, have I tap danced enough? Is there a question from the audience? We're not leaving until we get one student question. How about that? Something. Yes, Randy.
Can you explain the makeup of the 18?
Oh, sure. That's an easy one.
I wanted to ask Colonel Hanson if he could explain the makeup of an A team, which is the way a Special Forces team operates.
Certainly, that'd be. So yeah. So the question is, what is an A team? So you heard in the letters that were written, an ODA, That's synonymous with an A team. That's synonymous with a team, synonymous with a detachment. So Operational Detachment Alpha, A team. 12 soldiers. When it's full, a captain as the team leader, a master sergeant or an E8 as the team sergeant, then an intelligence sergeant, usually sergeant first class. I digress. The second in command is now a warrant officer on the team. So a warrant officer is someone that's fleeted up from within the enlisted ranks to not being truly a officer, but designated as a warrant officer. And that's a very unique role that they fill on Special Forces detachments. And after that, you have 2 soldiers in the different military occupational specialties. You have 2 weapons sergeants. You have 2 communications sergeants. You have 2 medical sergeants. And you have 2 engineers, communications, weapons, medics. So Justin was a medic. That was his job series. So he trained to be a medic, but he's a Special Forces medic. And then you have weapons sergeants, Special Forces weapons sergeants, and commo sergeants and engineers. So anyway, that should all add up to 12. And then as a major, you fleet up to what becomes called the B team, the company headquarters. And then as a battalion commander, I was left fortunate enough to serve on what's called the C team. Then we have another thing called the D teams. That is known as Delta Force. That is why that is called that. Special Operations Detachment Delta. So when you hear about that term, that's where Delta came from. So an A team was the question. That's what Justin served on. A 12-person detachment. Now could be men or women. That changed within the last year or so. 1 captain, 1 warrant, and the rest are enlisted soldiers. And the beauty of it is they normally stay together for a long time. The captain will rotate out about every 2 years, but generally speaking, the warrant officer can stay on the team quite a while, and the enlisted soldiers will move around a little bit, will move up to be the intelligence sergeant, and then potentially move up to be the team sergeant. And when I first came to Special Forces, the average age was like 36. These guys were really old, which was great. They had a wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge. Now, the average age is quite a bit younger, probably in the 30 years old or something like that. So the average age has come down quite a bit with people being brought in essence, right off the street to becoming Special Forces. You don't first have to serve in the Army like Justin did and then transition to be Special Forces. We are bringing some people directly from the recruiting station into Special Forces, and that has dropped our average age. So that hurts a little bit of our maturity, and that hurts a little bit of our experience, but you're not broken yet, you're stronger, your motivation is potentially a little higher, so it's a trade-off when that happens. All right, other questions? Yes, ma'am.
That's a relatively new development that you can recruit directly into the Special Forces.
Well, it's cyclic, actually. It has occurred in the past. It occurred in the 80s. It stopped. It occurred, during Vietnam a little bit. But yes, so this round really started. We needed more Special Forces about the 2006, 2007 timeframe, and they brought back that opportunity to recruit right off the street. Now, the standards are very high. Some college education, extremely physically fit, so the standards for that are very high. But it does happen. That's correct. All right. How about you old timers back there with the garrison caps on? What do you got for me? Yes, sir. So the question is, the people that are killed by roadside bombs, like Justin was, how come we can't detect it? Well, it's a constant evolution. They have this type of bomb, we figure out what it is, we can detect that, they know we can detect it, they got to come up with something else. So it's a constant tit for tat. They are a learning organization just as we are. It went from very basic bombs, okay, we figured that out, to very technologically advanced bombs that would be able to penetrate our armor. We put on more armor, then the vehicles get too heavy and too big to go off-road, so then we have to be stuck to a road. So then therefore, then they started packing culverts just with fertilizer bombs, very low technology, but when it's 300 or 400 pounds, it goes off and it flips a vehicle over, bad things tend to happen. So it's a constant tit for tat, or a constant evolution or revolution in how the bombs are created and how they are emplaced. Do we find more than we absorb? Yes. So you don't hear about that. We'll find 100 a day and one gets through. So generally speaking, our odds of finding them were pretty good. But the one that we missed is a catastrophic event. And they're smart about it. Vehicle bombs were a big thing for a while too. And then suicide bombers. Very hard to stop a suicide bomber. The ultimate guided weapon, as they would say. The ultimate smart weapon is the suicide bomber. A thinking organism that can defeat the protocols that we had in place to stop it. And especially when you talk about cultures, women in the Arab culture, dress a certain way. There is a cultural expectation not to violate their personal space, much different than what an American would allow or what an American could handle. All of you that have been through an airport, an Arab woman would be mortified potentially to go through a pat-down search or something like that, or to walk around with clothes that obviously show if you have a suicide vest on your person. But to answer your specific question, we find more than we take, but there's always new ways for them to drop bombs or build roadside bombs. Question up here? Oh, yes, sir.
Do you have Special Forces K-9s?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
Do you have Special Forces K-9s?
We do have Special Forces canines. So each Special Forces group has at least 9 dogs that work with it. And we take some of our Green Berets and then transition them to become dog handlers. And we maintain our own kennels. And we deploy with those dogs. And the dogs are a great way. They're multi-purpose canines, so they're not just attack dogs. They are also bomb sniffers. And the canine is one of the best ways to find explosives. As long as they are trained on that specific scent. So again, it goes to, you can create a bomb with some other scent that the dog potentially wasn't trained on. But yes, we do have canines, and actually I'm a recipient of one of the canines that we retired. One of my 5th group dogs came up for retirement, and he happens to live with me now. So I have a Master Sergeant, retired, living with me as my dependent. He doesn't get much in the way of veterans benefits. But Master Sergeant, retired Sandokan, has 15 months in Iraq. He tackled 2 Iraqis trying to flee a target, and he discovered 5 bombs and weapons caches. So he is quite the hero. Next. Do we have a student one yet? I don't think so. Don't be chicken. Part of these values was like, step up and say something. Yes, ma'am. Excellent way to divert. Well, he is living in Tennessee at the moment, so he wasn't able to travel up here for this. But he is a beautiful German Shepherd. I'll gladly show you a picture after. Any others? Serving as a Green Beret, what we do, how we're much better than SEALs. Anything like that?
Discuss those general steps the Army's taking to protect us from cyber threats and threats to our cybersecurity. Well, cybersecurity is that's such a broad term spectrum. For all of you in the audience, students in the audience, I mean, if you're interested in computers and serving in the country, cybersecurity is like the hottest buzzword ever, right? How to protect against that? Well, I tell you, you make it so onerous that you almost can't use a computer. There's one way. 12,000 passwords and all this other stuff and firewalls and you name it, right? I'm not the most technically savvy person. The Army has created, actually, this is well, I don't know. You guys won't find it very interesting, but the Army actually has created a cyber branch, and the Army has developed cyber centers of excellence where they study these problems, and the Army has really created cyber units that can do offensive cyber and defensive cyber. So if you are interested in this cyber stuff, and I'll tell you, the Army would love to have you to get your computer science degree or whatever it is. If you're really a whiz at hacking and all this other good stuff, right, that we hear about, the Army has really dedicated a lot of resources to understanding how to protect us from cyber attacks, potentially how to do cyber attacks. And it's really in the nascent stage of this field, us getting our hands around how to do this. So at Fort Gordon, Georgia, the Army is currently building a huge Army cyber command to actually look at this problem. At the Academy, we have officers now being branched cyber, which is really a brand new branch. I think it's probably 2 or 3 years old. Where in the past you could only be infantry, armor, you name the branch. There is now a cyber branch, so you can be a cyber officer. So if you are interested in that, there is a lot of opportunity. What we are exactly doing to protect ourselves, well, I actually don't know. I turn on the computer when I come into work and I turn it off at night, and hopefully I do good things on it and I don't go to websites I shouldn't go to and fall victim to phishing scams and all this other stuff. I hate being on the computer and I hate being on the internet. I've never looked at Facebook and all this other stuff, right? Part of that was for my job, but now that I'm not serving in a special forces unit anymore, now sadly my picture's on the dang web. But that's another story for another day. So I hope I answered your question, Superintendent. So anybody's interested in that stuff, the Army does have a lot of opportunities for cyber. You guys are making this too easy for me here. You got some hard questions like, what's up with North Korea? And what the heck are the Russians doing? And how long have I been in Iran? Or, did I have tea with the Shah or the Khomeini? You don't even know what I'm talking about. So Cindy asked how many deployments I've had. Our deployments are short, right? So I could say a number and you'd go, oh my gosh, right? So it's hard to answer. But basically I have about 48 months in Iraq. That covers probably 6 deployments or 7 or whatever the number of stripes are on my uniform here. I started though early in the 90s, 6 months in Haiti in 95, then a trip to Egypt for 6 or 7 months in 98, then 6 months in Kuwait,
then a couple trips back and forth to Afghanistan, then a lot of time in Jordan. I think I have 4 or 5 months in Jordan, a lot of time in Iraq, 4 months in Bahrain, a few trips to UAE, Qatar, most of the Middle East countries. But as far as combat time, which is probably really the crux of your question, I think 48 to 50 months in combat, something around there. There was a question here. Somebody had one. Yes, ma'am. What's happening in Burma? Well, sadly, I don't really have too much information or much of an opinion on Burma. I can go back historically and say, you know, is it called Myanmar today or is it called Burma today, right? And the difficulties that it's always had. But as for today, I'm really not versed enough in that area of the world to really have a good opinion. That is a segue, so I'm not going to answer that question, and I'm going to segue into a question that I want to answer. So in Special Forces, you geographically assigned areas of the world, and that's why I have so much time in the Middle East. With being in 5th Special Forces Group, the Middle East is my area of expertise, and they teach you every Special Forces soldier has to have a second or third language. So they taught me Arabic, and that's why I spent most of my time in the Middle East. So honestly, I don't know too much about the Far East, minus North Korea, thoughts on North Korea, South Korea, a little bit of the Philippines, and a little bit, really those are really the only pieces of interest I really have had in the Far East. So Burma, I don't really have an opinion on. So I apologize. But our 1st Special Forces Group covers that area, and they would know. Yes, sir.
So I do have a question reversed then. What do you think about North Korea and what's going on now? Do you think we're all intelligent enough to back away from this ticking time bomb, or we got to jump in ahead first?
Well, so North Korea is a very interesting animal. You know, I can't quite figure out what the interests are of the North Korean regime and why they would continue down this path. But we couldn't figure this out with Saddam Hussein either. Hey, Saddam Hussein, knock it off, or we're going to come kick your door in again. I dare you. Okay, well, it didn't work out so well. So with North Korea, with the saber rattling that's going on, you have to understand the culture that goes on there. I've had to learn the culture in the Middle East. You have to learn the culture in the Far East. You have to learn what saving face is. You have to learn, what they would say or how they receive information. And to what end are they operating on? So these are good questions that I don't have the answer to, right? On one side of the coin, you hear it's good that they opened up the hotline again and they're willing to talk, but there's always the saber rattling. And honestly, I will say, sadly, I don't really trust the media to be reporting on what actually is happening. And that's a terrible indictment on our First Amendment rights that were talked about earlier. And what the news media, if we can't trust the news media to be the watchdog and to accurately report, then how are we supposed to have an informed opinion and make decisions? So part of me says I hope that the news media is just sensationalizing things and making up things. Part of me says I hope that cooler heads will always prevail. What I do know is that an attack on the Korean Peninsula would cost an incredible amount of lives. And let's hope that that doesn't occur, that cooler heads prevail. But I will say that the North Korean regime this is now my personal opinion and not the Army's opinion. I always got to say that, right? I would hope that the Chinese government would handle the North Korean regime and make sure that it stays where it needs to be. I wish the North Korean regime would go away. Again, this is my personal opinion now. I wish the North Korean regime would go away because the people that are in North Korea are oppressed, and it's my job to free them. And I wish I could. I wish that they were. I wish that they could come into the 21st century. I wish that they could, not be under the oppression that they feel. The sad part is they don't even know that they're oppressed because they just don't know. When you see the amount of information and the amount of the ability for the North Korean population to receive outside information and news and see what the world has changed to and become, they don't even know. And that's the North Korean regime's control over its own people. So that's pretty sad. If you ever seen this is another cool thing to Google or look up here, guys, is the world at night and how everywhere else has got lights, but North Korea is like totally black. Right? It's amazing. Look that up. The satellite imagery of North Korea at night is like zero lights on. And just extrapolate that to what the North Korean people feel and how the government is trying to maintain control. And the government, its true interest is self-preservation, right? So it's going to do what it thinks is right to preserve itself. And they potentially will make a tremendous mistake in that if they don't understand us, just like if we don't understand them. And I don't see what the North Koreans' end state is. As far as being a nuclear power, I could understand that. They want a seat at the table. They want to be listened to. They don't want to be, treated as the redheaded stepchild. Forgive me if there's any redheads and stepchilds in the audience, but they don't want to use that be that way. Conversely, if they try to rattle the saber too much or try to expand that capability to having intercontinental ballistic missiles, that's going to scare a lot of people. India and Pakistan don't scare the rest of the world because all they ever wanted to do was fight each other. But if North Korea wants to get a nuclear bomb, they have it, and they want to be able to deliver it anywhere around the globe, that causes a lot of problems. So I probably haven't answered your question because there is no answer to it, but just giving you some of my personal thoughts on it. Yes, sir. No. So that's an excellent question. He asked me when I first went to Iraq, when I left Iraq, and really the changes that I witnessed over the time and how I thought the people responded. So I crossed the berm, I guess 2 days before anybody knew about it. I was on an A-team at that time as a detachment commander. So I crossed the berm somewhere around 17 March, something like that. I think the big show kicked off around 19 March. So I went in. I was hunting Scud missiles. Surprisingly, we didn't find any. I thought we did. So basically, I was 6 months on, 6 months off, all the way through then until the end, till New Dawn kicked off in 2009, 2010 timeframe, somewhere around there. So that was my last full-up deployment. And then since I have not necessarily deployed to Iraq, I was in Bahrain. We had soldiers now going back into Iraq to deal with the ISIS crisis, but I physically didn't come back in there at that point. So the Iraqi people, what was good about going 6 months on, coming home for 6 months, and going back for 6 months was I did see this pretty tremendous change in the Iraqi population. First, being happy we were there as liberators from their own tyrannical regime, to watching them have sectarian violence, to then the country being torn apart between Sunni Kurds, Sunnis, Shia, and Kurds. So not only a religious strife, but a cultural strife and an ethnic strife that occurred. Should the country be broken up into 3 areas? Should it not? The saddest part of Iraq, and this is a little side note, is Iraq could be a wonderful country. It is the birthplace of civilization. It has water. It has fertile ground. It has mountains. It has everything. That it could be it could be an amazing country. But it can't get out of its own way in a lot of respects. The comment is right. Generally speaking, the Iraqis are good people. But they became disenfranchised, and they needed to find work, and they needed to find ways to feed their family, and they needed to find ways to survive. And a lot of times that was equated to being handed $50 just to shoot an AK-47 or an RPG at us. Did they really hate Americans? No. Were they looking to feed their family that day? Yes. And the sectarian violence just became insurmountable for them. That, I think, has changed pretty significantly with ISIS and the Sunni uprising that occurred and trying to establish the caliphate there in Iraq. And I believe that the Iraqis are potentially getting onto the right track. They're realizing, I think, that the sectarian violence is counterproductive, and that it'll take a long time. Truly, when I crossed the berm in 2003, I anticipated that I would be able to vacation in Iraq in 15 years. I really thought I would be able to visit Babylon, be able to visit all the historic sites there. Well, I was pretty wrong, wasn't I? 15 years later, we're still duking it out. But with the Arab, Muslim coming together and fighting the world, Arab-Muslim world, coming together and trying to fight ISIS and trying to rid itself of the radicalism that exists, I see that as potentially the best way forward. Not what the Americans can bring, and not trying to make Iraq look like America, but the actual Iraqis are trying to band together and create some type of nationalism to get rid of the scourge of ISIS within their own borders. So, I think with that said, I'm probably way over time here, and I know that's a good stall tactic. You guys didn't use the stall tactic to get out of your last class. I'm really kind of disappointed in you. I'll be followed here by Colonel Retired Pete Farrell, and I think we'll end this thing here.
Well, Colonel Hanson, on behalf of everyone here today, we want to say thank you. First of all, to carving out time on your busy schedule and then traveling all the way to Hancock to be with us today. I think your remarks give our young students some food for thought on what it means to serve America, and also the values that are going to be important in their lives as they go forward. So we appreciate you doing that. And we also appreciate you helping us to remember Staff Sergeant Justin Whiting, who is a product of this school system and a product of this community. He was a young man who volunteered to be a soldier and who certainly lived the Army values, especially those of duty and personal courage and selfless service. So, sir, thank you for being here today. We want to present you a little plaque as a memento of your visit with us today. The inscription on the back says, "Presented to Colonel Andrew S. Hanson. Thank you for your service and dedication to America." Sir, thank you so much. So I'm going to take just a brief second to cover two things on behalf of the Legacy of Honor organization. And the first one is to say thank you. Thank you to all the members of the community who turned out today to be with us. I know we sincerely appreciate that, and I think I can speak for the Whiting family that they appreciate the love and support, particularly this time of year. So thank you all for being here. I want to thank the Board of Education, Mr. Witt, Mr. Jacobs, I certainly want to give a big thanks to Dr. Dougherty, to Ms. Asquith, to the whole team here at HCS for supporting this today, and we certainly couldn't have done it without your help and support. I also want to give a big thank you to the HCS band under the direction of Mr. Murray. I thought they sounded great. Let's give the band a round of applause. And finally, I just want to put in a plug for an event that we're having tomorrow night. So tomorrow is the 10th anniversary of Justin's death in Iraq. To me, it's very ironic that tomorrow is the debut for this nationwide debut for this movie that you've heard mentioned, 12 Strong. It's about a true story of a Special Forces A-team, really the first Americans to deploy after 9/11, the first Americans to fight back after 9/11. So our good friends at the Hancock Cinema went out of their way to obtain the movie. It's going to be playing starting tomorrow night. Legacy of Honor is working with our good friends at the American Legion. We're going to have a chili dinner for all of the veterans in the community and their spouses. That chili dinner will be at the American Legion from 4 to 6:30. And then we have a block of tickets, free tickets, for any veterans and their spouses to attend the preview of the presentation of that motion picture. So please help us get the word out. There's additional information in this week's paper, but that'll be tomorrow evening. And at this point, I'm going to turn it back to Mr. Murray and the HCS band for their final number. So would I ask you to please stand?
Thank you all once again for attending. Students, please stay seated till the 9th period bell rings. Community members, thank you for attending today. Thank you very much.